Hello, dear friends. Today we are at St. Michael's Church in Antwerp. Beautiful church with very nice instruments. And this organ here is by Stevens, a Belgian organ company. And the organ was built in 1909. So it's, let's say, in a late Romantic style. Very typical Belgian. The only thing which is a bit special is the organ case. Well, actually, there is no organ case. I don't know. Yeah, if you can see this. Let me put it like this. Yeah. So you see, the pipework is all free, actually, without an organ case. Just on the bottom there is some woodwork, which is actually not so bad. It's quite nice. But you can clearly see the two swells on both sides and the pipework, which is just open. I'm going to talk today about famous piece. It's played a lot, and I wanted to discuss. It's about the Preludium and Fugue on the name of Bach by Franz Liszt. Now, to start with, on an organ like this, like beginning of 20th century, it has a lot of similarities with the German organs from this period, Sauer, Walker. And whenever I play this piece on this kind of instrument, I use the edition by Straube. So I don't use the original edition. I mean, there is a very nice edition by Universal, which is of course much closer to the original writing of Franz Liszt. But as Straube did with a lot of composers, he arranged the music for the instruments of his time. And also in this case, he arranged these Liszt works, not only the Prelude and Fugue, but also other Liszt works. He arranged them for his, of course, in first place, for his own instrument at the Thomaskirche in Leipzig, the big Sauer orgel. So what you see in the edition is that you see there is a lot of guidelines for registration, but also for the use of manuals and articulation. I don't know if you can see it very clearly. Yeah, you see some of this registrations. So it's very clearly written for this kind of organ type. He put some registration for, and he also needs 3 free combinations. So you need to have an organ with some free combinations. And very important, an organ with the general crescendo, the Waltz, as they say in German. Usually, with these Walker Sauer organs, it was what they call a roll schweller. So it was a round thing, and which you used with the foot to add stops or to diminish stops if you go the other way. In our country, this was usually placed as a normal swell pedal, as it's also, sometimes you see it also with other organs, that the general crescendo actually looks like a swell pedal. Wait, I will try to show you how it looks here. I don't know, I hope you can see it. So we have a swell for the receive, for the positive, and here is this, the general crescendo. So it's things you need. Now, what is the difference between a roll schweller and a swell pedal as a general crescendo? Well, the advantage of a roll schweller is that you have more possibilities to do more gradually the adding of the stops, because with the normal kind of swell system, your stop changes are limited. Like in this case, I think it's around 12. While with a roll sweller, you can easily have 20, even 30 graduations. So that's a bit, yeah. The thing is, of course, that Rollschweller is a bit more difficult to arrange yourself. Swell pedal is a bit more, especially when you're used to using swell pedals. Rollschweller, yeah, it needs some practice to get used to it, and it's a bit more work. You're a bit more sometimes awkward position on the organ, and doing this while you're playing a very difficult passage, it can be quite tricky, and then it's easier to have a normal swell pedal. So that's one of the features which, if you want to use this edition, you certainly need. You can also, of course, when you have an organ with free combination system, with Setzer system, you can do everything with Setzer, but the playing is quite different. Of course, you can leave it up to an assistant to do the registrations, to manipulate the Setzer system. But of course, historically, I think the organists did it themselves. That's why you have all these features on these instruments, actually to be able to do it yourself. So let's say if you want to play it really historical according to the time of Straube, and you can play it on this kind of instruments like Walker Sauer with all these features like some free combinations, this Rollschweller, then of course it's much more interesting to look at the music. Now, what is the big difference with this Straube edition and when you compare it to the original music by Franz Liszt? Well, in the beginning of the music there's actually not quite a big difference. You see some articulation, you see some stringendo, some means of how to perform this music. But from the second page you already start to notice the differences. So one of the things is, from the second page, after the introduction, he already asks to play it on two manuals. Now I will demonstrate these first 2 pages and I will explain what is the difference with the original edition. Yeah, like this you can still see the manuals. So okay. So what I do to start is I put some registration, as he asks, some soft registration on the normal stops. I've put on the general crescendo, and I just completely open the general crescendo before starting, because he's asking triple forte, which is, I think, almost kind of tutti. Okay, so be prepared, because this organ quite loud. I don't know how it will sound in your microphones, but let's see. So this beginning, quite normal. So these are the first 2 pages of the piece, and I don't know if you know the piece, probably you noticed some differences compared to the original edition. Like, to start on the second page, you have this theme. Of course, you notice that there is a diminuendo at the end of the big chords in the beginning. There's a diminuendo in this passage. There's a diminuendo, so you can use the general crescendo to do this. Actually, it's very convenient because you only play with one hand in this passage. Everything is free. You can use general crescendo without any problem because there's no pedals at this point. But then the difference is that for the theme, you have this theme in the lowest note. he asks to play it on the first manual. So in this way it comes out a bit. In the meanwhile, because of this decrescendo, we arrived at a kind of mezzo piano. And then you hear better this theme. In the original edition, it's played on one manual. Then it sounds like. In Straube's edition, it's on two manuals. So you hear actually the theme. You can hear it better. You can distinguish it better. Also in this passage, there are further in this passage. Again, he asks poco a poco crescendo. So you can open the general crescendo again, because we go again on the third page to fortissimo to have this. So that's some of the differences. Also, what is very interesting in this fortissimo passage, which comes after, he also asks to play it on two manuals. Now, original is also one manual, but the problem is then you get a bit like in between each other. You have to release some notes in the chords to be able to play. I will show you. So we have this passage. And it's a bit, you have to release some, you see? And actually, when on big registration, I will put a bit more. It's difficult sometimes to hear this, what is happening. You do a lot of effort to play all these 16 notes, and actually, you don't hear a lot of it. Straube here also asked to play two manuals. The chords on one, and the 16 notes on another manual. Then this comes out better, and you don't have the problem of having to release some of the chord notes which are written along, because otherwise you cannot play these notes, because it comes together. So very good solution, I think, by Karl Straube to make this more clear. The same thing in the next passage. Then the piece continues actually quite as it is in the original, but then there is some already interesting passage after all this big noise from the beginning. You arrive at this passage where it goes very soft. I will play just a bit before. You have this. Goes to another manual, and then also two manuals. Yeah, so you notice in this passage also he tries to get the theme out just very bit, because we are on very soft 8-foot stops. But to have this theme, you know. And in the normal edition there is a one manual. With Straube it's on two manuals. Yeah? So you play with one hand on two manuals at the same time. Otherwise you cannot perform it. Then it continues more normally. Now there is a very interesting registration in the soft part, which always intrigued me, because at the beginning, for the first free combination, it's asking on the third manual to have voix céleste and violin 4-foot. Now you would expect with a voix céleste always to have at least some other string stop, because voix céleste without any other string stop, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's tuned too high. Yeah? But he asks it with a 4-foot stop. and no other 8-foot stop. And actually, this combination sounds actually quite interesting, especially on this instrument. I don't know if it will work on any instrument. And of course, you have to consider also that on many organs, also of this time, Sauer-Walker, when you put voix celeste, automatically some other 8-foot stop will be added. It's usually like one stop voix celeste, but it's actually 2 rows of pipes, a string stop and the actual voix celeste stop. Now it was interesting to notice that when I first just tried to follow this registration, it actually sounded quite interesting. You would not expect it immediately, but it's very interesting. We have on this organ a mellophone 4-foot stop, which is actually like a soft string foot stop. And it matches actually quite good with this voix celeste. I will add it and I will play you this passage where he asks this specific registration. And normally you would expect, or you would think, okay, voix celeste, I will add another string foot stop, but then it doesn't quite sound quite the same. Yeah? And without? Not only more soft, but it also gets this kind of like etherical atmosphere much more. So it's something you should try when you play it somewhere. Use the voix celeste, not with another string stop, but with a soft 4-foot string stop. It's worth trying. Another thing is, there comes a very quite intriguing passage in the fugue of this piece. He asks to start the fugue like very softly with only Eoline 8-foot stop. And now an Eoline 8-foot stop is on this German organs very, very soft. It's usually the softest stop you have on the instrument. A bit a string tone, but very softly. I will use in this case, we have a nice Dulciana, which is also soft string stop. And he starts this passage like this. And then he asks, add Gemshorn. Okay, I will add here another string stop. It becomes a bit louder. Then he asks, add a flute stop for this theme, second theme. Then he asks at quintadena. I don't have a quintadena, so I will just open the swell box a bit. Of course, you always have to adapt to the instrument you have. And I ran out of 8-foot stops on the third manual. So it continues like this. Then there comes a passage, very interesting. When the 4th voice in the fugue enters in the bass, he asks to play this on the second manual. Now, this means it becomes quite hard to play because you play all the voices on the third manual, and then you have to play the theme in the bass, the 4th voice, on the secondary manual. But of course, you're playing also all the other voices on other manual. So it's this passage I will show you, and then you go to. It's quite hard to get it done like this. Now what you can do here, in order of course not to disturb too much the musical line, that you can play it like keep playing fluently, is since there is no pedal part in this part of the music, I would suggest you can couple the second and third manual, because they're coupled, manual to the pedals and put out of all the stops of the pedal. Then it becomes easier to play. Then you play just the fourth voice in the pedal. Then it sounds like this. And then you can continue in the manual. Just a few bars to take over in the pedals, just to keep everything go fluently, because it's quite hard if you want to play it as it is written. Then another interesting part in this fugue is there is a part where you will be playing on 3 manuals at the same time. It's just a bit further in the music, so actually you're playing this part which is on 2 manuals already. So you have the right hand on the third and the left hand on the second. Then he asks to go with left hand to the first manual, because the theme enters. We keep the right hand on the third manual. And then he asks to have a secondary theme on the second manual, and the rest of the voices stay on their own manuals. So it goes like this. Very interesting. And then we go to second manual, everything. And then also some minor manual changes, but nothing very special. So also a very interesting passage, and to see how he structurizes this music in order to make every voice heard clear, especially when there is some theme or some new introduction of another theme. To make this clear, he really taught very well how to realize this on an instrument, of course, of his time. Then another interesting feature is at the end, because this is already, we can talk and talk about this music, but I just take out some things. I will now go, which is also very interesting, at the end of the piece. Originally, there is written like this. This grave section at the end. Well, here he adds some notes, he just adds some octaves. And then also here, everything in octaves, also the pedals. Octave pedals, octave in the manuals, to give it a bit more strength and power. And also this chords just before the lento. He adds even some quints. Yeah? Instead of the original, which just says something like. He adds. Interesting idea, I think, because in this way it almost starts to resemble, if you know, the Guillou version of this piece, where Guillou also he makes it a bit more pianistic. He made a kind of version which combines the piano version of this piece and the organ version, and actually, in this way, he was not the first to do this. He actually, you can see with Karl Straube, also went a bit already this way in making it more in a pianistic version, but much more suited for the organs of his time. Sauer, Walker, this kind of instruments. So, but also, and that's why I came here to demonstrate that it also works very nice on a Belgian instrument of this time, although we have some German instruments also, some Kleis, Walker, but just to say that it works very perfectly also here on this kind of instruments. Well, there is actually, of course, a lot more to say about this music, and I just wanted to point out some guidelines to compare this Karl Straube edition, which is an edition by the Peters edition. And it was actually very commonly used. It was used a lot, and it's still, you can still order it. In contrary to the Straube Bach edition, which is very hard to find, which is actually the very same idea as he did with the Liszt edition. But with Liszt it was much more accepted to adapt the music to the instrument, and of course with Bach it was less accepted. But nevertheless it's a very interesting edition, and when you can try it on a real organ of his time, you will have a lot of fun with it, and it opens your eyes in a different way to the music. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and see you next time.